The Raptors welcome the Pistons to town right before the All-Star break, and the Raps look like they were ready for a week off, getting kind of waxed by the East top dogs. Let's talk about it.
This is the Raptors Postcast, your instant game reaction for the Toronto Raptors. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this episode of the Raptors Postcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network covering your team every day. And we're coming to you live after the Raptors 113-95 loss to the Detroit Pistons on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Locked On Podcast feed. I'm Zulfi, Sheikh, credentialed journalist covering the Raptors and the NBA for over 2 years now with outlets like Sportsnet and Raptors Republic. And now I'm one of your humble hosts of the Raptors Postcast, breaking down each and every game with you. And with me is Duane Notice, aka Dino, professional basketball player and analyst. Duane has represented Canada. He's played with the Raptors system with the Raptors 905, and he's still hooping professionally in leagues like the CEBL. And on tonight's show, we're going to talk about how the Raptors came up pretty short against the East leading Pistons. We're going to dive into Jakob Poeltl's return to the lineup, and we'll get some thoughts from our resident pro in a segment we like to call Take Notice, and then we'll wrap things up by handing out our player of the game. And Duane, I need you to kind of walk me back here because I'm going to be a little harsh to start. I felt pretty disappointed by this result. Not just the fact that it was a wire-to-wire loss to the Pistons where they never led. I just felt like how the Raptors came out in this game was very flat in terms of the effort and activity department. And I know people kind of roll their eyes when you say those words. It just seems like you're oversimplifying things. But when you're getting kind of back cut to death by Paul Reed in the first quarter, where he has 16 points on 7 of 8 shooting, and he finishes with 22 points, 3 steals, and 4 blocks, and Cade Cunningham basically gets to do whatever the hell he wants, where he's just kind of cooking you. And mind you, Cade is an MVP candidate. He's an all-star. He's great. I get it. But the Pistons pummeled the Raptors on the glass. They shot better from 3. They shot better inside the paint. They got to the line more. This felt like the Pistons were the hammer, the Raptors were the nail, and both teams kind of knew it. And if you want to give them some grace, you can say, if not that, the Raptors very much played like a team that's one game away from a week off, and they were excited about the break. So I know I'm being a little harsh here, but ultimately the Raptors go into the All-Star break 32-23. They lose to the Pistons for a 7th straight game. What do you make of the loss?
Man, it feels like in the Eastern Family Conference, the Pistons are the big bro right now. They're sending us to the yard, beating us down, and they're telling us to come back and try again another day. But the Raptors in the first quarter, I mean, they were submitting to too many turnovers. And like you said, they just weren't locked in. And one of my favorite sayings right now is if you're not locked in, you'll be locked out. So for the Raptors, that lack of focus definitely played off in the wrong way for them. But for them just not being able to contain the basketball, like you mentioned it, certain guys getting off that are not even supposed to be having the type of game they're supposed to be having. People like Duncan Robinson that are getting to the basket and finishing in the paint, who probably doesn't do that on a regular basis at all. So for the Raptors, I feel like they just got outmanned, out-physicaled, and just outmatched. I mean, the Pistons played with so much intensity, and on top of that, they played so hard, and they have so much toughness from just the depth and a performance standpoint. The Raptors probably came into the game thinking, because the Pistons weren't at full strength, that it would be an easier matchup. But, man, they let their guard down tonight, and it showed. And I think the Pistons, to their credit, like I said, they kind of remind me a little bit reminiscent of the Bad Boys Pistons in the way that they play, because they have that chip on their shoulder, that attitude. Being the top team in the East are definitely the barometer for the Raptors, and they didn't stand up to the test tonight, unfortunately. But, again, playing with hand checking, playing with the sense of urgency, diving on the floor for loose balls. I think the Pistons were just dictating the game on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned how the Pistons weren't at full strength. Obviously, without Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart, who are out for a couple games with suspensions. And even despite missing you could easily say two of their most physical, big-bodied guys, they still very much just set the tone in terms of being the aggressors in this game. Before the game, for those that don't know, I was actually at the game covering it, and we talked to JB Bickerstaff beforehand, and he mentioned how, like, it's the narrative this Pistons teams get sometimes, and just they think that they react to everything. They get over they kind of like go over the line in terms of the physicality. He said that was a little unfair, but he doesn't want to take away the fact they do have an identity. This is a very physical team. It's a very dogged team, and they're going to play that win. They're going to toe that line at all times because it's part of their edge. And then you saw it against this Raptors team that, ironically, the Raptors, when they play against some of these lesser, against competitive teams, they look like the aggressors. They're a more physical bunch. But like you said, when you go up against Big Bro, that's not always going to work. You can't use the same tricks as Big Bro. You got to be a little different. And then ultimately, the Pistons beat the Raptors plus 25 on the glass. They win the paint battle 50-34. That's a monstrous edge for the Pistons inside. And then when you're doing that while you're also making more threes than your opponent, the Raptors make 10, the Pistons make 14. Like, the math isn't on your side. It just very much felt like when it comes to these top 10 teams in the NBA, there's this MO they have against the Raptors, and it's come up time and time again. When you get out physicaled, the Raptors don't really have a way to respond. And it's just something they're going to need to figure out. But I guess from your perspective and seeing it, when they keep running into this wall against physical teams, like, what exactly is it that they're falling short with?
From a player standpoint, you want to never get to a point where you feel like you're a front runner. So again, the Raptors are such a great defensive team and a solid defensive team. And yes, they have that pressure, but it's one thing to, have ball pressure or to be on a string defensively on the perimeter. And it's another thing to kind of have that intensity in terms of the interior and just having that toughness. And I think they're lacking that. And it's starting to show. We talked about it on the offensive end, but also on the glass. The disparity there is just too much for anybody to, recover and win a basketball game for. So it's just really difficult. And then the points in the paint, plus 16 for the Pistons, they were just really in control. And that just goes to show that the Raptors were kind of on the other end when it comes to, we talk about basketball kind of being a fight, right? And I think the Raptors got hit first and they're unable to recover. And for them, they have to figure out ways to, like I said, playing fast for them is a strength. And I think they only had 9 fast break points today. That could be a testament to the lack of their defense and not being able to get stops. So they're unable to turn it into some transition points. Or it can just be for the fact that, again, the Raptors are continuing to struggle in the half court. They have to figure out a certain way to kind of generate synergy. Yes, they're getting open shots, but they're not able to connect. So how are they also going to be able to get the ball into the paint, penetrate, and get to the basket and get some easy ones? Because if they're not getting it in transition, then it's coming in very difficult ways. And I like the fact that IQ was aggressive tonight, and he was, 4 for 9 from the three-point line. So he was doing his job and his part. And again, Scotty playing great on defense despite the foul trouble, which I think is tremendous from him, because most players, when they have that early foul trouble, they're going to kind of lock out mentally and be less aggressive, right? Because they're reluctant to pick up that foul. But Scotty was still playing. If you cut the game on, you wouldn't have thought that Scotty was in foul trouble. That's how great he was playing on defense, right? But you got to have everybody on the same page. And I felt the Raptors weren't there tonight. And it showed because through the turnovers, through the lack of, cohesion on the half court setting, and then just not being able to hit shots like you mentioned you're not going to be able to get it done when the Pistons are dominating on the glass, dominating on the inside, and also making more 3-pointers than you.
Yeah, like, we haven't said this much about the Raptors this season, but there's some times where it's just not your night. And again, I don't want to just oversimplify it and give them an excuse. This was a disappointing loss, all things considered, but this is a make or miss league. And this was very much one of those nights where it felt like your shots aren't falling, all their shots are falling. When, again, like a Paul Reed is starting 7 of 8 from the floor and cooking you. Duncan Robinson's having a strong game. Cade Cunningham basically was doing everything he wanted out there. He was pulling up from 3 basically at will and having his way with it. He shoots 6 of 11 from downtown. And outside of Scotty Barnes, honestly, it was a relatively quiet night for most Raptors, barring Emmanuel Quickly, like you said. He finishes with 18 points on 7 of 15 shooting. 4 of 9 from 3. Scotty, I felt like you said, even with the foul trouble, he was pretty positive. The fact that he had 3 fouls by the end of the first quarter and was still able to kind of stick around for the non-garbage minutes of this game, finished with 17 points, 3 steals, 4 blocks. We just keep saying that about Scotty. His stocks numbers just keep rising. But yeah, like I look at Brandon Ingram, just named All-Star reserve, injury replacement for Steph Curry. Shout out to him. He has a pretty quiet night with 13 points and 5 of 7 shooting. You see a guy like RJ Barrett. He has 16 points, 4 of 6. He gets to the line quite a bit, but just like that impact of like turning the tides really wasn't there. And again, the only guy who really had that was Scotty Barnes, where I believe it was in the second quarter, the Raptors had gone like 3.5 minutes without a basket. What does Scotty do right when he checks in? He muscles in for a paint touch, kicks it out to Mamu. He hits the 3. Raptors finally break that drought. It was a 9-0 run for the Pistons. Now the Raptors are kind of back in it. Scotty gets a putback dunk. Couple plays later, he gets a steal, transition lob dunk, and Raptors are building some steam. But that's really all they had in this game. The only run was that when they cut it back down to single digits for a bit. But other than that, they were basically playing catch up.
Yeah, and it was because the Pistons, man, like their defense is incredible. Just watching that game, they put on a defensive clinic. We saw a play where a guy like Sheikh was able to steal the ball and he tried to go up for a layup. 9 times out of 10, that would have been either an and one or possibly just a wide open layup. But three Pistons, Thompson, someone else, they blocked that shot as they were playing volleyball in high school. It looked like they're just playing pitter pat. It was crazy. But that pursuit is another example of how sound they are on the defensive end. And then just talking about the physicality, a guy like Reed rolling to the basket, just letting his, dominance be felt and known. And then, like you said, Kate Cunningham, we'll get to it later, but his ability to just pick apart the Raptors, especially in a pick and roll situation, I think was just special, how he's able to dictate the game and have that command on the offensive end. But I think the Pistons just out hustled the Raptors tonight. And yeah, going forward, they got to figure out other ways to be effective. Again, we saw Brandon Ingram kind of struggle because the Pistons were sending two at the right time. It wasn't like they were double teaming right away, but they were waiting for, Brandon Ingram to turn his back and make that crab dribble. And once he did, it was like the second defender was kind of making a soft double, forcing him to kind of make those 360 jump passes out of the defense. And the Pistons were scrambling well. And guys like Grady Dick and other shooters like Mamu weren't really hitting tonight. So when Brandon Ingram was not able to get the isolation game going, I know he had a nice bucket over the left shoulder in the first half to kind of build the Raptors out. But outside of that, when he's not able to get to the line or get his shot going, it's tough when the ball's not moving and it's kind of sticking. Again, Raptors need to find some type of success going forward in the half court. I'd like to see them kind of try some different sets out. And if they're unable to, like you said, it's a make or miss league. If you're not able to make open shots, then you got to figure out other ways to put the ball into the basket.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And somebody who could potentially help with a lot of this is Jakob Poeltl. Again, he made his return to the lineup tonight. It was his first game since December 23rd, I believe. So over a month without action. He had missed 24 games in a row. He ends up playing 20 minutes, 9 points, 4-7 from the field, 6 rebounds, 1 turnover, 2 fouls. So a pretty relatively quiet night for him. But overall, I think a return worth noting. So I guess from you, 2 things. What did you make of Jakob Poeltl's return? And also, do you think it was the right call to have him come back for just the one game, again, against a very physical Pistons team, and then head into the All-Star break?
Yeah, hopefully his body can respond, right? When you're out for injury and you face a team like you mentioned with the Detroit Pistons who are so physical, it might have been a good thing because now the Raptors are going to have a break, so he's able to recover depending on how his body feels after this game. But it kind of worked out in his favor. A guy like Duane is not playing tonight. We know how physical he is. And then also Stewart, who I don't know if he thinks he's in the WWE or if he's in the NBA, but we've seen him want to fight on many occasions, but he's also physical. But Poeltl, I thought his activity was pretty good. Like seeing him come out the pick and roll and able to roll to the basket, I think him and Quickly have a great chemistry and a great connection. We saw him hit him over the top for a nice little layup, and he finished. So Jakob, he just has to get his feet back under him. I think it's under the same kind of circumstances that we had to give the grace for RJ Barrett when he came back from his injury. I think Poeltl will be ready after the All-Star break, but having his presence is going to be big because he's such a big guy down there in the paint, and he has great hands, and he's such a good passing partner with the other bigs. Like Scotty is able to find him in the dunker area, and Poeltl's able to go up. And we know guys like CMB, when he's in those situations, sometimes he's hesitant to go up in that area, in that paint, and he wants to kick it out. And for a team that's not shooting the ball well, you want to capitalize on scoring inside. So I think having Jakob back in the game is going to be great for that.
Yeah, I think aside from just what his production is going to look like, I think we can admit he was a little rusty, but he was getting his feet wet again. Just having him there as another body is going to be really important for this Raptors front court rotation. These guys, they take a bit of a beating. Like we already know CMB's dealing with a thumb injury. Scotty's taking his little hits and scrapes here or there. So Andrew Mamakashvili in this game, he went down for a second after he took what looked like a chicken wing almost. So if you were going to lose him, then this front court rotation is going to look even dicier. Trace Jackson-Davis only plays 10 minutes in this game. It wasn't as productive as his debut was, but they're still figuring out his role in this rotation. But I think for Jakob, the biggest thing for fans to take from this is that having him back and having him back at 100% are definitely 2 different things. They seem to have Jakob back. And like you said, we're going to see how his back responds coming out of the All-Star break. But 100% Jakob Poeltl, I still think is a bit of ways away. And maybe it's not fair to expect that right away either. On offense, like you said, he was pretty solid. His instincts are still there. The very first basket of this game, he sets a hard screen for RJ, rolls, catches it in traffic, and finishes at the basket. Coming right out of halftime, I believe he had a nice little leak out in transition, finishes with a reverse layup. Those instincts to be in those spots is there. Where I do think it's going to take him a bit more time on both ends of the floor is navigating inside the paint. he feels, just watching him, it looked like he was very ginger around the paint in terms of like where he wanted to move, how much he was willing to commit to using his back and his upper body in terms of moving guys around and muscling with players. Obviously, your back is very involved in that. There was one play I remember vividly sitting there was when Duncan Robinson tried to set like a back screen on Jakob, and he almost like flinched, like because he like instinctively he was like, oh, whoa, my back. So like those are things he's gonna have to get over, and once he's less timid in the paint and he's willing to be that Jakob Poeltl that bodies around inside there, like his first rebound in this game didn't come until midway through the second quarter, right? Like so clearly he's still really overthinking a bit of that, but it's his first game back, it's his first minutes back in over a month. So once that process gets a bit more comfortable for him, I think he'll start to look like that Jakob Poeltl that we know.
Yeah, it's going to take a bit of time, Z. I mean, it's so hard to simulate in-game stuff in practice. You can go through all the drills you want, non-contact. You could have all the training staff in there working with you, defenders, pads, and everything, but it still is not going to be the accurate representation of an actual game. So, yes, he's going to be a little bit gingerly. And like you mentioned, having a back injury, man, that really plays mental tricks on you. So for him, just being able to just get over that mental hurdle is going to be big for the Raptors going forward, especially for him. But there's only one way to do that, and that's putting in actual live reps in these games. So I'm happy he got to be out there. But again, you don't want a guy who's not going to be able to potentially give it his all, because then you could potentially be hurting the team by being out there and not playing to your full potential, right? So like you said, he has to find that happy balance, that happy medium where he's able to continue to recover at a high level, but also still impact the game enough where he can help the Raptors win, especially be a force down low.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to wait and see with him. Again, he gets a week off now to recover, and we'll see how he responds coming out of the All-Star break. And coming up, as Duane and I continue the Raptors postcast, we're going to talk about the Raptors ball screen defense and how it just wasn't there tonight against this Pistons team. And then we're going to hand out our player of the game as we continue the Raptors postcast. This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed sponsored jobs is the move. Because instead of hoping the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your specific criteria, like skills, certifications, and location. And if I were hiring, I wouldn't just want someone who can help. I'd want someone with real experience who can jump right in. That's what I like about Indeed. You can get specific and target exactly what you need. And with sponsored jobs, your post gets seen by candidates who are actually a fit. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get $75 sponsored job credit to help your job get the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. This episode is also brought to you by Gametime. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment. I was at Scotiabank Arena tonight. The crowd was rocking, especially when they celebrated all of the Raptors All-Stars, whether that's Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, Darko Rajakovic. Hell, they even celebrated Glorilla going to the celebrity game. It was rocking in SBA tonight. But to getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple, which is where Gametime comes in, and it's become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast, without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. It's simple. You pull up the Gametime app, pick an upcoming game, and have tickets locked in within a couple minutes. You get to see the all-in price up front and check your view. Just check the view from your seat right away, so there's no surprises when checking out. Again, you can also check out zone deals where you choose a section and Gametime selects your seats. Everything about the process is quick, intuitive, and stress-free. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not gametime.com. Lastly, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sport you care about most, FanDuel gives you way more opportunities to stay connected to the action. The drama of curling matches going from slow to fast in a blink of an eye. speed skating, races decided by inches, hockey games that feel different from the opening faceoff. Even niche events become must watch when you're fully locked into the competition. Heck, ice dance has been all the rage, all the controversy, all the fun. Canada gets a bronze. Everyone's been locked in. And FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience engaging from start to finish. So the Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. All right, as we continue this episode of the Raptors Postcast, be sure to check out Sean Woodley with Locked On Raptors in the morning to get more in-depth analysis of this Raptors 113-95 loss. And now we're going to continue with a segment we like to call Take Notice, where our resident pro, Duane Notice, that's why it's called Take Notice, gives us his thoughts and observations on the game. Duane, take it away.
Tonight's Take Notice has to do with the PNR coverage. And no, I'm not talking about Puerto Rico, where I'm sure the weather is anything but Toronto's right now.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm talking about pick and roll defense, where I felt the Raptors really struggled tonight. And that led to the Pistons 50 points in the paint, which we already mentioned, the 14 threes on the perimeter. I think too many times they blew the scout. And we talk about the detail to the scouting report on how to just really impede the effectiveness of them coming off the high flat ball screens or having guys come off the wing when they had to step up or a drag screen. And I think that's where guys like Cade Cunningham was able to really pick apart the Raptors. And it really felt like he was at a Continental Hotel breakfast at a buffet, just getting whatever he wanted out there, whatever he needed for his team, he was able to do. But that's where guys like CMB, I feel like their absence is really, really felt, because usually he's really capable of being a switching partner for these guards, right? And Shed's able to peel off, and they're able to kind of, have Scotty go on if there's going to be a mismatch. But when you have a guy like Jakob out there, yes, we talk about his interior, his great hands, his ability to finish at a high level, and his IQ and his effectiveness. Unfortunately, he kind of has those slow feet, and we call that an elephant out there, and that's somewhat of a mismatch. So he was kind of in a soft hedge, and rightfully so, but he doesn't want to. You can't switch on to a guy like Cade Cunningham. You don't want to be stuck onto that kind of island. It's not fair for a big like that, because Cade Cunningham will be having him at his mercy. So he was kind of in a soft hedge, but in doing that, Cade was able to go downhill at ease. He was able to hit Reed for the pick and roll, the little pocket passes, so Reed could finish at the basket, like you mentioned, backdoor cuts, everything like that. And then he was also able to, more importantly, I feel like, catch his rhythm. How many times did he come off that step-up screen and have, I think, consecutive 2 or 3 threes in a row? Coming left, simple, one of the easiest shots in basketball, especially as a righty who shoots with your right hand. Dribbling left into the pocket is one of the easiest shots as a player that's right-handed. So him getting that space because Jakob is afraid to switch, I think, is one of the issues that kind of snowballed and became a factor throughout the game. And once he had his rhythm, I mean, his night was his night, right? The stars were the limit for him. But again, the Raptors have to figure out a better coverage when it comes to pick and rolls and handoffs. And I think tonight that's where they were getting hurt. They're being targeted on that end.
Yeah, I think it's something where you see it in real time, where you welcome back Jakob Poeltl's strengths, but then you see where his weaknesses are going to lie in some of these matchups. And that's like you said, you miss CMP in this, a guy who can really move his feet in these matchup situations. They inserted Trace Jackson Davis for spot minutes, and he moves his feet pretty well for a guy his size, but it's still not as nimble as CMB. Sandro gives up a lot of physicality in these matchups, and he's not really a guy that you want stuck in between making those decisions either. So it was tough because when you see, again, Cade Cunningham just getting those pick and roll switches and just pulling up again and again and again, you're like, maybe you give Jakob Poeltl this game off to rest and bring it back later. That's why I brought up that question earlier, because you see it where a guy like Cade and the Pistons, that was very much on their scouting report, probably hey, Jakob Poeltl's back in this game. Let's test him. Let's see how that back really is doing. And it wasn't something he could necessarily keep up with. He tried, and like you said, they tried different tactics. It wasn't necessarily there. It's going to be a matchup dependent thing, I think, for them. And again, if CMB was available, I'm sure you would see a hell of a lot more of him in this matchup for what he can offer on those switches. But I think it's going to be something where the Raptors aren't going to stop seeing that anytime soon, especially when Jakob Poeltl's out there as he tries to recover through this. So it's something they're going to have to figure out.
Yeah, they're going to have to. And just to add on that to another layer, it's the Raptors have kind of a short backcourt in the sense that Quickly and Shed are not the tallest guys in the world, the guards. So if you rely on that soft hedge, of course, the guard is supposed to go over top and kind of provide a rear view contest. But when a guy like Cade Cunningham is 6'8", he's not seeing that rear view contest for that hand at all. So he's really just at the park in his flow state, getting that shot off. So again, there's so many other big guards and wings that are effective at that in this league. So again, the Raptors are going to have to kind of key in on that and focus on that going forward, because they can't be picked apart on just a high screen ball coverage situation. They got to be able to allow the ball to move. I feel like the Pistons were just able to come on the court, get a drag screen, and get any shot they wanted. They got to be able to make the Pistons play into the shot clock, deep into the shot clock, instead of having them just have so much confidence and free will out there.
Yeah, they're gonna have to find ways to disrupt some of these opponent like counters to them, and we'll see what they figure out. Again, Darko Rakovic, you got a week, you got an All-Star break to figure some of this stuff out, and there's some tougher matches ahead for this Raptors team. But until then, it's time for us to hand out our player of the game.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
All right, I personally think this comes down to two players, and again, I'm going to turn to our resident pro to decide. You can throw in a third if you want, but I see Scotty Barnes, and again, when you're talking about the few moments where the Raptors were able to try to scrounge together some momentum, I felt like Scotty Barnes was in the center of it. He finishes with 17 points on 5 of 13 shooting, 0-3 from downtown. He does get to the line a decent bit, 7 of 7. He finishes with 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, 4 blocks. And then, like you had mentioned, Emmanuel quickly, he was looking for a shot. He was trying to juice the offense how he could. Finishes with 18 points, 4 of 9 from 3, 5 assists, and 2 rebounds. Those are two guys that stand out to me. Again, you can throw RJ in there if you want. He had an efficient night. But if you're handing out your player of the game, Duane, where are you going?
Man, I got to go with Scotty B, and it's only right. It's fitting. All-Star game coming up, but he did not take the night off tonight. He played with tremendous effort. And like you mentioned, him, I'm always going to be a fan of him because he plays with both sides of the ball. He made some incredible blocks on the defensive end, whether it was help side or whether it was him just being the primary defender. But his ability to run the floor as well, and just like you said, him just sticking his nose into all the moments where I feel like the Raptors needed when it was time for them to make their push or their run, he was the catalyst of that. So it's no secret that he's the reason, the main ingredient why the Raptors need to keep him in the thick of things going forward if they want to be successful or be a team that's going to be talked about, especially on the Eastern Conference. But, man, his ability to just, like I said, attack the paint at a high level, make good reads, pass the ball. He's always tough in the stat sheet, rebound the ball. And then guard his matchup or guard 1 through 5, I think is something that's super commendable. So, I think we have to get the player of the game to Scotty for sure because he showed up tonight and he played with so much effort. And again, I'm going to harp on this again because as a player, I know how it is. You get 2-3 first quarter fouls or first half fouls. Your coach takes you out. You come back in. You start playing super reluctant because you're trying to preserve yourself for the rest of the game. But he was still flying around out there. Even when he picked up his 4th foul early in the second half, it still didn't deter him. And I think that is just an example of his true, resilience and adversity when it comes to playing hard and playing, until the game finished to the final buzzer.
Yeah, Scotty, again, he was doing what he could on both ends of the floor. Unfortunately, it was not the Raptors' night tonight. They fall to 5-11 by my count against teams with the top 10 net rating. So it'll be interesting to see when they're facing the top of the top and the cream of the crop. Can they keep up? So far, it's been a bit of a struggle for them, but they have the All-Star break to reset and hopefully get back into the swing of things from that. And again, a 7th straight loss to the Pistons is kind of funny. When the Pistons snapped that 28-game losing streak against the Raptors, that ironically started this Raptors losing streak against the Pistons. So the Raptors do get to face this Pistons team 2 more times, I believe, in the regular season. So hopefully they can end that skid. But until they do, that does it for us tonight. For myself, Zulfi, Sheikh, and Duane Notice, thank you to everyone who tuned in live. And for those listening the morning after, we appreciate everybody in the comments showing us love. And if you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to Locked On Raptors on all platforms. And again, don't forget to comment below if you have any thoughts on the Raptors loss. But until then, we'll be back next Thursday. That's right, after the All-Star break, live after the Raptors visit the Chicago Bulls for the first of 2 straight road games. So we'll see you then, breaking it all down on the Raptors Postcast. Peace.